Okay, we're live.
At this time, I would like to call to order the regular meeting of the Crestwood School Board of Directors for February of 2021. We are going to have the Pledge of Allegiance, and after the pledge, I ask that we observe a moment of silence in honor of Amelia Kramer, who served on the Crestwood School Board for 30 years, and for John Malone, former head of maintenance at Crestwood, both who have recently passed away. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the
the
republic
republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
for all.
Thank you. At this time, we'll take roll call.
Miss Bibla? Here. Mr. Brogna?
Here.
Mrs. McCurdy?
Here.
Mrs. McGovern?
Here.
Mrs. Spath?
Here.
Mr. Swank?
Here.
Mr. Costello?
Here.
Mrs. Haddix?
Here.
Mr. Boone?
Here.
9 members present.
An executive session was held prior to the board meeting today in regards to contracts, personnel actions, and pending litigation. We will later be asking for approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of January 21st, 2021. Missed the one there. And approval of the treasurer's report for January. Do we have any correspondence, Mr. Mahalik?
Correspondence right now.
Okay. Superintendent's report, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, members of the Board of Education. Good evening to our public. It is with great honor and respect that I announce the Leo Swank Memorial Scholarship. The Leo Swank Memorial Scholarship will be awarded annually to a Crestwood senior who participated in football at Crestwood. The player will be in good academic standing with a minimum GPA of 3.0 and will attend a college, university, or other institution of higher education and is committed to playing football at that institution. The award will only be available to student athletes who attend and play football at a non-Division I football program. So student athletes who are committed to play at the following levels will be eligible: Division I AA, Division II, Division III, NJCAA, NAIA, and programs of such. The award in the amount of $2,500 will be a one-time non-renewable scholarship and will be paid directly to the individual or their family. In years where multiple student athletes are eligible, the committee may elect to split the award at their discretion. The award recipient will be selected annually by a committee consisting of Crestwood's head football coach, Crestwood's director of athletics, and Mr. Randall Swank or his designee. Again, just an unbelievably beautiful way for us to continue to remember someone that is so, so important to this community, someone that I feel so grateful that I've got to meet for the last year of my career, my first year here at Crestwood. So thank you so very much for this committee and to Leo's family, just a real beautiful, committed family to our students. Mr. President, I would also like to announce a very special event that will be taking place on March 31st. Keith Delgado is an award-winning teacher, educational comedian, and curriculum creator. Keith feels that many students have been bullied throughout their life, and he teaches them how to deal with such adversity. With the cutting epidemic, as well as the high rates of teen depression, bulimia, anorexia, and teen suicide in the American high school population, he believes it is important to address these issues, even though it may be uncomfortable to speak about them. When conducting his assembly for middle school and high school students, he feels it is imperative that students know that help is available if they are dealing with these areas. Keith will be presented to the Crestwood school community on March 31st of 2021. These will, of course, be virtual presentations and workshops, and there will be 4 of them throughout the day. Presentations will include teacher and staff workshop, 2 student presentations. We will break them up for a 7th and 8th grade presentation and a 9th through 12th grade presentation. And then there will be a very special evening parent and community presentation. The district will also receive full access to Keith's award-winning curriculum, lessons, and videos that we can utilize within our classrooms. More details regarding this presentation will be forthcoming and announced prior to our presentation day, which again will be March 31st of 2021. So we're very much looking for that, looking forward to that. And Mr. President, I've asked to be with us this evening, Mr. Jim Zabogoski. Everybody knows Mr. Z as a member of our teaching staff, a coach, and just a great all-around guy. Mr. Z is going to talk to us tonight about esports and everything that we have going. So the floor to Mr. Zabogoski.
Thank you, Mr. Mahalik, and thank you to the board and all the administration for giving us this time and offering this exciting new club for Crestwood, and that is our Esports Club. Quick history before I talk about where exactly we're at. Last fall, Mr. Mahalik, Mr. Ambrosi, and Mr. Blanchard put out an initial survey to see if there was an interest at all, and they garnered over 100 students that showed interest. Since that initial work, some work has been done to refine exactly what the Esports Club would look like, what it would entail. When those details became more clear, another survey was put out about interest with more details more than just generalities. And what we had was over 60 students showed interest in what the Esports Club was going to look like. Since then, we were in communication with Play Versus, which is a company and website that is looking like it's going to act as our hosting league. And they offer 5 games within their high school division and 2 different games within their youth division, which is a little less competitive. When those details became presented to our potential esports club members, some of them decided that those weren't the game titles they were interested in, or they weren't interested in playing right now at a competitive level. So they bowed out. So what we have today, up to today, is 2 Google Meets this week, and finalizing exactly who wanted to be in and who wanted to be out and what teams they were going to be on. So as of this afternoon, we have 34 members of the club who are on teams and ready to start playing on March 1st when the spring season starts with Play Versus. It's an 8-week season. If players are opting to go into the competitive aspect, they'll play March and April, and in May there will be a playoff and eventually a champion team crown. If they're only in the non-competitive youth division, they'll still play a full 8-week season, but there will be no playoffs after that. A couple of things important that came out of these Google Meets that we had. They were very well attended by a cross-section of our student body, 9th through 12th graders, who were excited, grateful, and enthusiastic about having an esports club here at Crestwood. They were anxious to share their knowledge, their experience, their suggestions. And it touched on two things that I think Crestwood has made great strides in over the last couple of years. We've done a lot of great things, but two of them was connecting our curriculum to career paths, and the idea that what we're trying to do here at Crestwood is their future is our goal. And these things can be ideas or philosophies, but I think we've done an excellent job in some cases, especially with the Esports Club, of making those things actually happening for all of our students, and reaching some students that normally maybe wouldn't be involved in extracurricular activities. By looking at what I see here in some surveys, I would say about 25 to 30% of the students in the Esports Club have never been involved in any other extracurricular activity for Crestwood. So we've met and are reaching out to and connecting to a group of students that haven't participated in any extracurricular activities with Crestwood yet. And I think we all know that the more connections our students have with Crestwood in different ways, not just academic, but extracurricular or clubs, the better that is. I had two particular interactions with students that struck me on kind of both of those topics of career. And one student, I'm sure he wouldn't be mentioning his name is Kurt. I had Kurt as a student in second grade, and I taught Kurt the difference between dimes, quarters, and nickels. And he bought stuffed animals in the back of my second grade room at Fairview. The conversation with Kurt was a little bit different today. Kurt suggested, after much research, peripherals, keyboards, and mice that would be appropriate for our esports club. He felt that the ones he's suggesting struck a balance between affordability, reliability, and affordability. He also offered his services. He built his own gaming PC and offered politely to show me how to do that and teach me how to build my own PC. So the tables had definitely turned between Kurt and I. I am the student and he is the teacher. And I thought that was quite an empowering moment between the two of us. Maybe he didn't realize how empowering that was for him, that he was now the teacher of me. And I think we realized that these students, a lot of them are more experts in this than we are. We have a lot to learn from them. And by learning from them and listening to them, it's an opportunity to model what we're telling them to be lifelong learners. And I told him I'm very happy to learn from him and he could teach me. I think that's something that's, whatever his future is, we're showing that whatever that is that's going to entail, he's going to be successful out of it. Part of that is from what he learned here from Crestwood. So another student talked about today at the meeting, colleges he's looking at having sports teams, and he was thrilled. He had already done some research about possible esports opportunities at Crestwood and has been hoping we would offer something, because he plans his near future is playing esports at a local university. So he was thrilled that we were offering this for him. So where we're at right now is we have 34 players signed up on teams already to play on 5 different games coming up in March. Teams are formed, we're ready to go. Looking into the very near future, like Mr. Kurt had suggested, help me build some PCs or contracting out. We would love to have a space in our school. And I know Mr. Mahalik spoke at the committee meeting last week about possibly using some of the cyber cafe, some of that space. It's ideal. It would be an Esports Lab. This would be a place that members of this club could meet after school, just like our basketball teams or athletics teams do. Meet after school, practice, participate. When we have extracurricular activities, we know for our students, it opens them up to new experiences, learning opportunities, new people to talk to, collaborate with, and our esports club will be no different. The other advantage is with the PCs that we're looking to purchase, these computers, the plan for this, these have multiple uses through other students in the Crestwood School District. These are powerful machines that could be used from anything from possible computer science elective in the future to graphic design. They could be expanded upon with different hardware, software. They're powerful machines that can handle a lot of processing. So I think, what we have going now is very strong and positive for our students. And I think it is something that in the future could benefit even more students. So I'm excited to see how our spring season goes and see how we stack up against students from all across the East region. We'll be playing students from Maine to Florida. So right now it's a perfect activity, extracurricular, because right now the students will be playing from home, and that's very safe. They'll be playing on their own equipment, but connecting with each other still, and connecting with students from across the East Coast and Eastern region. In the future, we definitely would like to see a physical space in our school so these students can gather physically, exchange ideas in person, collaborate, plan, strategize, and even help develop what this club could look like in the future. So we look forward to the near future and what this club can become with the support of our athletic director, our administration, the students, the board, and our community. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Zabagowski, and the amount of time and effort you've put in thus far. And I'm glad that you've had a great experience reacquainting with some of your old students. That's excellent. Thank you so much. And with that, Mr. Boone, I will yield back the floor to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mahalik. I think that's 3 pieces of great and exciting news, very positive for the Crestwood School District. Thanks to everyone involved in that. At this time, solicitors report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to echo the superintendent's comments and thank Randy and his family for sponsoring a great scholarship in memory of their wife. Again, Randy, thank you. That's very, very generous. With that, other than what we discussed in executive session, I have no other report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll go to committee reports. Mr. Brogna, financial planning.
I'll be seeking approval of items 1 through 8.
Thank you. Transportation Committee, Mrs. Spath.
No report for this month.
Okay. Policy, Mr. Costello.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be seeking approval of items 1 and 2.
Thank you. Human Resources, Mrs. McGovern. She with us? You're muted, Mrs. McGovern.
Okay, it's not up on my screen, Barry, but I believe
Okay.
I'll be seeking approval of items 1 through, let's see, 4.
6, Maureen.
Oh, it's 6. Okay, it just came up now. I'll be seeking approval of items 1 through 6.
Okay, thank you. Academic programs, Mrs. Bibla.
Thank you. I'll be seeking approval of items 1 through 3.
Okay. And I will give some information here on item 2, the Distinguished Alumni Award. This was just established this year. It will be given annually to select and deserving individuals who have made outstanding contributions to society. Individuals who, all with roots in the Crestwood community, have inspired to, met with excellence in various aspects of their professional and personal lives. And equally important is that this program will raise the level of awareness and appreciation throughout the entire Crestwood school community concerning the invaluable academic possibilities offered by our local schools. I am very excited about this. We'll have a great ceremony in the fall. I think our students on the high school campus who will get to meet these people are in for something special. The award winners were selected from an extremely deep and competitive pool of graduates. If you were to see the list and the accomplishments of the people who have matriculated from Crestwood High School, it just blows your mind away. Unfortunately, we're only giving out three awards this year. We don't want to diminish the value of the award. There are many, many deserving people, and those who were not selected this year, their name will stay in the pool as long as we have the committee. The committee was formed to identify worthy candidates who graduated from either Fairview, Whitehaven, or Crestwood High School, and nominations were also submitted by the public. In all, over 20,000 graduates dating back to the 1800s were eligible for the award, and the public may submit additional nominations at any time through the district website. Going to give you a brief rundown on these people that we're going to be honoring in the fall. James Harvey graduated from Fairview in 1942 as class president and valedictorian. He went on to become a member of the Tuskegee Airmen, who were the nation's first all Afro-American group of military pilots. He fought in World War II and the Korean War. He was a Top Gun, awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, along with multiple air awards. Lieutenant Colonel Harvey would net 11 air medals in his Air Force career due to his many engagements with adversarial forces. After the Korean War, he served as a flight commander, instrument instructor pilot, test pilot, assistant group operations officer, flight safety officer, battle staff training officer for the commanding general of the 27th NORAD region. Our second recipient is Marcy Turney, Crestwood class of 1988. She co-owns Saffron Turney Hospitality, made up of 6 restaurants and 4 retail operations. Along with her partner, Marcy has been recognized for pioneering the revitalization of a once desolate area of Center City, Philadelphia, into the vibrant and thriving Midtown Village. Marcy is the executive chef for the group's 6 restaurants, with 3 more on the way, including a restaurant in the iconic Love Park. Acclaim for Chef Turney's cooking entrepreneurship has been universal, including a 2014 semifinalist nod for Outstanding Restaurateur by the James Beard Foundation. And in 2019, Chef Turney won the Trailblazer Award, given out annually by the Philadelphia Magazine, to a woman in the Philadelphia region who is considered a pioneer in her field and has proven to be a successful leader and has made considerable contributions to her respective peers and community. A self-made success story and known to be one of the top chefs in the city. Our third recipient is Louis Fouché, class of 2003. Since 2017, he has worked as a saxophonist and music producer on the Late Night with Stephen Colbert show for the house band. Louis is a musician, a producer, an MIT grad, and he set up a STEM outreach professional program. He has worked as a saxophonist, arranger, and producer for 10-time Grammy award-winning artist Eddie Palmieri. Since 2010, he has performed in 27 countries on 6 continents and has composed or performed music appearing on Grammy-nominated and Edison Award-winning albums, and that one is in the Netherlands. Graduated from MIT in 2007 with degrees in physics and chemical engineering. While a student at MIT, he co-authored a scholarly paper, real long name here, and this information will be coming out in a press release. He is co-founder and former program coordinator for the MIT Online Science, Technology, and Engineering community, and it is a 6-month blended online science, technology, engineering, and math enrichment program for high school seniors from underrepresented and underserved backgrounds. That is presently in its 10th year and committed to diversity and equity in the STEM fields. So 3 really outstanding graduates of Crestwood will be honored in the fall. At this time, co-curricular, Mr. Swank.
I will be seeking approval of items 1, 2, and 3.
Physical plant and grounds, Mrs. Haddix.
I'll be seeking approval for items 1 and 2.
Thank you. Technology, Mrs. McCurdy.
Thank you. No report this month, Mr. President.
Thank you. Positive behavioral intervention, Mrs. Bibla.
I'll be seeking approval for item 1.
Okay. Intermediate unit, Mr. Costello.
Thank you, Mr. President. Minutes are on file in the superintendent's office and on the district website. The March LIU meeting is on Wednesday, March 24th, 2021, in the LIU board meeting. And our February meeting, which is usually held the final week of February, was actually held this Monday. So we already had our Monday meeting, which was February 15th.
Thank you, Mr. Costello. Wilkes-Barre Area Career and Technical, Mrs. McCurdy or Mrs. Spath? I'm not sure who's presenting.
Nope, it's Stacy Haddix as well. There's no report this month.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll take roll call for our voting session.
Ms. Bibla,
Here.
Mr. Brogna,
Here.
Mrs. McCurdy,
Here.
Mrs. McGovern,
Here.
Mrs. Spath,
Here.
Mr. Swank,
Here.
Mr. Costello,
Here.
Mrs. Haddix,
Here,
Mr. Boone.
Here.
9 members present.
Financial planning, Mr. Brogna.
Thank you, Mr. President. Seeking a motion and approval for items 1 through 8.
Motion, Mrs. Spath.
Barry, do we need to do the minutes of who approved the
Oh,
minutes? And sorry, you got to go back
Yeah.
before financial.
Let's
Sorry
start
about that.
over. At this time, I'll be seeking approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of January 21st, 2021. I so move.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Bibla,
Yes.
Mr. Brogna,
Yes.
Mrs. McCurdy,
Yes.
Mrs. McGovern,
Yes.
Mrs. Spath,
Yes.
Mr. Swank,
Yes.
Mr. Costello,
Yes.
Mrs. Haddix,
yes,
Mr. Boone.
Yes.
Motion carried.
I'll be seeking approval of the treasurer's report for January 2021. I so move.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Bibla,
Yes.
Mr. Brogna,
Yes.
Mrs. McCurdy,
Yes.
Mrs. McGovern,
Yes.
Mrs. Spath,
Yes.
Mr. Swank,
Yes.
Mr. Costello,
Yes.
Mrs. Haddix,
yes,
Mr. Boone.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay. Before we get into the voting portion, do we have any questions from the public?
We do, Mr. Boone, if I may take them. Right now, this one is for Mr. Swank. Are volunteer coaches limited? The agenda list appointments pending numbers in the program. I believe the CBA for the teachers allows extra paid coaches where numbers warranted. This question comes from Mrs. Carolyn Boone.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mahalik. I can answer that. So Carolyn, what will happen is those currently volunteer coaches that are designated on the agenda will remain volunteer coaches without pay if we do not reach the numbers for the additional paid positions. If we reach those numbers, they will become paid coaches. But there is no limitation on the number of volunteers that we can have with a program. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Mr. Charlie Madrosky. He is glad to hear about our new esports program. He states we're literally in an educational crisis. Can esports fall on the athletics or educational foundation so we can help kids that are suffering major mental health issues get back to in-person education in the safest conditions possible? So absolutely, Mr. Madrowski, our students with major, all sort of mental health conditions has always been and will continue to be a top priority. There are supports in place. Our counselors have been working since last March 13th. We have our relationship with Children's Service Center continues. We have students meeting individually with counselors in our schools. That will never, ever be something, nothing is going to divert our attention away from those. One of the programs that I spoke about earlier tonight is addressing just that, the mental health stressors that are so many of our students have dealt with, and not just during the pandemic, but certainly since the pandemic. But we've had, students that have dealt with a lot of issues, bullying, depression. This is not new to public education, so we will continue to make that our focal point. And we certainly are getting and want to get our students back in person. As we know, next Monday, our K-2 students begin the following week, 3 to 6. And then shortly after, the entire district will be back. And our hope is to get everybody back 5 days a week. We're continuing to look for the guidance of lowering that 6 foot, that 6 foot social distancing mandate. And we are waiting for more clear communication from the Department of Health and the Department of Education. So thank you, Mr. Madrowski, for that question. Mrs. Jamie Halbin asks, she said, I'm sorry, I might have missed this, but there was an esport team, but is there an esport team for younger kids, or is this just for the high school? This new club is geared to so many of these kids coming up. And you're right, Mrs. Halbin. Right now, it is just going to be for grades 9 through 12. There will absolutely be plans to expand that to middle schools. And we have already had discussions, and we do expect next year that our elementary students will have their a night for just themselves to come in and participate in this program. So right now it's just starting as a 9 through 12 club. We will expand that very, very quickly. We just want to get this right, do it right, and there's so many pieces to this, but we will, Mrs. Halbin, get that in place. Jamie also asks about the raise that is being recommended for the athletic director. Statement is, we are at the point where we can give raises. Well, I would say that financially, we are always very, very, very careful where our monies are going. As it relates to the athletic director, this is my recommendation to the Board of Education. Been here now about 18 months or so, and I have really analyzed and evaluated all of our positions. I am so thrilled with my administration team and all my faculty and staff. This is the one position that is just so underpaid and probably undervalued. It's currently at $37,000 per year. It's a 12-month position. We have 28 sports that it oversees. There's no assistant, there's no secretary, there's no game managers currently. It's one person working probably 14 to 16 hours a day. He guarantee you, Mr. Ambozzi doesn't want me to say this. I recognize what this position is to this district. It is my recommendation to increase his salary because he is way, way underpaid. And when you compare his salary to other school districts and those that are the same size or those that are much, much smaller than us, and when you're comparing sports teams, it's how many kids are competing and how many teams are fielding or that are we fielding. It's transportation, it's clearances, it's academics. He's in charge of all that. If a child is a student athlete is academically ineligible, it comes on Mr. Ambozzi. It's lots of counseling sessions with players because of grades. Myself and my secondary teachers have been a part of that. It's never a good time for a raise in public education. I do not want to lose this individual. He's not said he was going to leave. He's not, I don't know if other people are looking at him. I just know that when I compare this salary to other individuals that hold this position, he is just really, really, really underpaid. So it's my recommendation to the board for that. And Jamie, I thank you for that question. A very good, important question. I have another question here from Jody Pellegrini. Jody, I'm going to ask if we can set up a meeting with you. Your question is very specific towards your child. You have bring up some very good points. These are important points. I'd like to see if you could speak with Mr. Blanchard as a time when we can speak with you. Myself and your building principal, I'd like to speak with you because again, this is really geared towards your son, and I think it's best that this is a confidential question, and I have a lot of questions to you regarding your question. So Jody, that will be answered. If you can meet sometime tomorrow, if not next week, we will absolutely address your questions. Let's see here. Okay. Tracy Patrick, has any thought been given to testing and grouping students homogeneous so educational gaps can be corrected and focused on from virtual learning? It's not just the bottom performing students that may need remediation. Tracy, very good question. And yes, there are plans for us to start a tutoring program. And also we're looking at doing a summer program. So those are in the works. We have our assessments going on. So we do have data and maybe I can next month present that data. I know Mr. Sayre has been collecting data, so we can do that. But there are lots of thoughts, and there will also be movement on those thoughts about doing remediation programs, Tracy. I do have another question here. This is Amanda Madrowski. Is it okay to give the AD a raise, but it was also okay to furlough support staff? So Amanda, it wasn't okay to furlough support staff. We just had no work for the furlough staff. So as as someone that is overseeing the district, there was no work. They had been working since last March 13th without kids in the building. Many districts went to a furlough much sooner than we did, but there was just nothing else that we can do. It became just groups of people, that didn't have any jobs that they can done. They had done everything that they can do, and anything else that was needed to be done was outside of their skill set. So yeah, I certainly did not want to okay the furloughs of those support staff, but there was just no more work. And during this thaw, we did continue to provide sports. So that's, again, my rationale on the athletic director's raise. At this point, that's all the questions I have. I think, and you have a question or you have a statement that is more of a statement to be read rather than a question?
Yeah, we've had some questions about submitting questions to the board. I just want to remind you that the board agenda is posted on the district website at least 8 hours in advance. And sometimes it comes out earlier than that. And on that board agenda are the directions for getting questions to the board. They should be submitted by 4 o'clock before the board meeting so that we have a chance to gather them together. So please, if you had questions, just a reminder, the agenda is posted 2 days prior, at least 2 days prior to our meeting, with instructions on there as to how to submit questions. Anything else at this time, Damian? We good to go?
Mr. Blanchard, can we start with, I think we had a question from our website. Could we go through those questions? I know some of them are not, I can't answer right now, but please answer them all and I will be able to get the questions. I think the one is from Mr. Bill Kane.
Yes, Mr. Mahalik. Mr. Kane has a few questions here. The first one, what is the actual cost of the ESS service? Is there a monthly or yearly fee?
Okay, so ESS, for those that were not part of our committee meetings last week, is a teacher substitute agency. And what they do is they will take over filling our daily substitute needs. And his question is, what is the cost? The company did submit a proposal, and I received the proposal. I have provided it to the board members, but I just gave it to the board members today. So I would really like the board to look at that. And then at next month's financial committee, we will discuss that. The staffing agencies, though, I just give Mr. Kane a little bit of knowledge from my experience. It's generally a per substitute rate. So if we're paying, you know, say $75, on top of that $75, you pay a fee. And the fee could be somewhere between $20 and $30 or somewhere in that neighborhood. And that's, you know, for the things that they do to staff. I mean, they take on the responsibility of clearances, they take on the responsibility of training, they take on the responsibility of advertising. And, you know, there is certainly a savings to the district because if we're paying an employee a certain amount of money, on top of that, you know, we are still paying their PSERs, salaries, and benefits. So even if we're paying $100 an hour, what it actually costs us is above that $100. So we will have exact cost as it relates to that company, definitely in March.
Thank you, Mr. Mahalik. Second question, and this might have been answered a little bit. Is there an additional fee for the number of substitutes that we use per day? What is the fee per substitute?
Yeah, so again, I think it is per substitute. And that fee generally is, you know, $20, $30 above what we pay that substitute. So we wouldn't pay the substitute any less. But again, a lot of the responsibilities that cost us money on top of that salary is no longer our financial obligation.
Okay, thank you. The next question I think was bundled in there. The following is, what is the district currently paying for the frontline? ESS will be taking over the cost.
So again, that's something that we're going to discuss with the company. If we should go that route, we own the frontline software. I'd like to keep it that way because I really, it's important for me to make sure that we have our data, that we are controlling that data. And if, you know, an agreement with an agency doesn't work out, we would still have everything that we need. I've been in situations where we, where we've terminated our agreements and then it was basically starting all over. So we would maintain the frontline cost, which is a yearly cost of, I think, about $8,500. And it is a 3-year contract that we have with Frontline. Frontline, which is ASOP, and that's an employee tracking system. So we can track sick days, holiday, vacation day, personal days, all those type of days. And up until now, we didn't have a system in place. We were using, a system, but it was our billing secretaries tracking these and obviously keeping them on file. Now we have an electronic system that our employees, and this is all of our employees, can use.
Thank you. The next is, what happens if ESS runs out of substitutes and has no substitute to send to Crestwood?
And that certainly can happen. I think in their demonstration and presentation to us, their focal point is just education. And I think that's one of the things that they sell, that unlike other agencies where they're staffing industry of all sorts, their main focal point is education. But there is a nationwide shortage on substitutes. And again, if there's an unfilled position, then we would do what we would do if we were calling the subs ourselves. We would find a way to fill that position in-house for the day. And we all know how difficult that is. But yeah, there's no guarantee that your fill rate is going to be 100%. It will probably be better, I would expect. But 100% every day, that's difficult.
Thank you. Another one is, how will the daily rate compare with our current substitute rate?
So we'll do an analysis for this. And again, some of these things we're just not ready today to answer. But we will do that. And again, my experience, and so not saying it's going to hold through here, but in 3 other districts, we did use staffing agencies, and it was pretty much very, very similar in cost when you really look at staff time devoted to filling these positions, when you look at advertising costs, filling these positions, training costs, filling these positions, there is a lot of time. And then when you remove that, it basically comes out pretty even.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mahalik. A couple questions came in regarding this. Michael Deckman, why do we need substitutes when we are virtual?
So we are going into phase 3 of our reopening plan, which will have our teachers back in classes, and teachers will, still probably need days off. And this is not just for this year. I mean, we fully expect to be 5 days a week soon, before the year is over. We certainly expect to have this staffing shortage for years moving forward, because there's just a tremendous shortage. So this is not short-term planning. This is long-term planning.
Thank you. Jamie Rosh Halpin asked, do current subs get looked over with this system and have to join the new system?
So we, with the system, Jamie, can have our own substitutes and use our own substitutes. In the presentation last week, the company said that you can still have your own substitutes. So if Jamie, for instance, wanted to just work for Crestwood and be paid by Crestwood, that would still be allowable. But most substitutes are looking to be working as much as they can, and working with an agency such as ESS allows them the opportunity. If there isn't something available at Crestwood, they can, go to one of the neighboring districts. But yes, in their presentation, they said those that have been with us can remain with us.
Thank you. And Mr. Mahalik and Mr. Boone, if it's okay, I do have a statement from Mrs. Madrowski she'd like me to read quick. Is that okay?
Sure.
Amanda Madrowski says, I would encourage the entire board, administration, and teachers to listen to the recent Facing Forward podcast interview with Randy Weingartner, head of the American Federation of Teachers. There is a link she posts, which you can find connected to the comments of this stream when it's over. Weingarten emphasizes that kids can be brought back to school in person with strict mitigation strategies, exampling masking, distancing, and ventilation, regardless of vaccines, since they have not been proven to prevent transmission. She notes that one key is planning for in-person and planning for pivoting to hybrid as needed based on positivity rates. The other key is the need for up to 30 to 40% more educators and 30 to 40% more space, major hurdles for which the Biden administration and new Secretary of Education, to be confirmed soon, will help to address with new stimulus spending. The rest is on the 13,000 or so school districts in the U.S. to plan based on the individual circumstances of each district. We do not plan well for education and its attendant resources in this district. We react. We do, however, I lost my spot. We do, however, plan for sports without masks while playing indoors with up to 2 parents present in our very own high school gym. Last night, there were probably 100+ masked people in the gym, including CSD personnel, while maskless players ran up and down the court, breathing heavily and yelling. I chose to be there with a mask, a risk I was willing to take. It is February. Start planning to open schools in the summer and fall now. Bring the task force, the board, educators, etc., into the very gym many of us were in last night and start planning. This cannot wait until the summer. In fact, we should be planning for voluntary summer learning now. Where there's a will, there's a way, and the will in our district has been too focused on sports, even in a crisis like this pandemic. And that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amanda. And today I was on a call with CDC, and they discussed high incidence rates and still the recommendation of the 6 feet. So we are looking at the entire situation, and we do plan on bringing our students back in the very near future.
We are.
In fact, we have some back right now.
Right. Phase 2 is in place. Phase 3 begins next Monday. But I need to say this one more time to the Board of Education, to the community. We came back on October 26th. We were in person on 3 separate occasions. I was summoned to a phone call with the Department of Health, Matthew Stem from the Department of Education. You can verify this. And we were encouraged, strongly encouraged to shut down with the numbers that our current community was in. Okay? 3 separate weeks. Those numbers at that time were far less than the numbers we see right now. Okay, so they talk about research. I'm not questioning them, but understand what we dealt with. We got ourselves open. We got ourselves in place that we felt our kids were safe. I'm a rule follower. You tell me to follow rules, I'm going to follow rules to the very best of my ability. I don't have any idea the research that they're citing now that says what wasn't good in November, on November 11th, the last time I was on that phone call, to now. I don't know. I've seen the research, very, very limited research. I'm not questioning the spread rate of students to students. I am certainly questioning the spread rate of students to staff and possibly students to grandparents or parents. We're coming back. It's not about vaccinations. I hope those people that have conditions and teach were able to get them. I also hope all of our senior citizens were able to get vaccinations. I hope that anybody with conditions that could compromise their health got the vaccination. We have tried to do everything that we've been asked to do. But when we met for the 3rd time, I was told with a very, very, very strong recommendation to close. And that's what we did. And now the CDC's guidelines have changed, and we are reopening. But what has not yet changed and what we're waiting for and looking for is that 6 feet to be when and where possible, as it originally was back in June, July, and before August 10th. Until that changes, you still have to provide 6 feet. And if you're not providing 6 feet, you're not following a mandate. I don't know what the consequences are for not following that mandate. And if nobody gets sick, and if there's not a problem, probably nothing. What I know for sure is that our legislators tried to immune school districts if something should happen, and that was voted down. So I'm going to assume if I knowingly don't do something that we're mandated to do, and gosh forbid something happens, this district is liable, and it's going to be probably very, very costly. So that's Mr. Boone, if I may. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Damian?
No.
Okay, at this time, we will go into the voting session. We already did our roll call. Financial planning, Mr. Brogna.
I'll be seeking motion and approval items 1 through 8.
Motion, Mrs. Bath.
A second.
Do we have a second?
Second, Bibla.
Roll call.
Miss Bibla,
Yes.
Mr. Brogna,
Yes.
Mrs. McCurdy,
Yes.
Mrs. McGovern,
Yes.
Mrs. Spath,
Yes.
Mr. Swank,
Yes.
Mr. Costello,
Yes.
Mrs. Haddix,
Yes.
and Mr. Boone.
Under item 1, I recuse myself on check number 675. Yes on all other items.
Motion carried.
We have no transportation report at this time. Policy, Mr. Costello.
Mr. Boone,
Yes.
excuse me. I do believe we have a transportation question. I'm not seeing it, but Mr. Blanchard, can you see there's a question from a Danielle Petrosky regarding transportation pickup?
Let me look. I apologize.
Sure thing.
The only thing I see that she wrote is just busing question mark. I don't see a question. Oh, hold on. Wait, here we go. I got it. I apologize.
Sure.
Yes, Danielle, is it going to be possible come March for Rice Elementary students to have a bus pickup at the current Mountaintop Kids daycare location?
Okay, thank you, Danielle. And yes, I'm going to be meeting with the Transportation Committee. As Danielle, you may know, or maybe you do not know, but we transport from daycares that are in the same boundary as the school that the daycare resides in. So that particular daycare is in the Fairview, so buses don't cross over that boundary line. This is something that's been going on for a long, long time, and with understanding, because it may be very, very difficult to take someone from, say, the Whitehaven area and, bring them, to New Angola if there was a daycare in that area. So the boundaries are set up just as the boundaries are for students going to school. I am aware of this, as I've been aware, and the Transportation Committee will be discussing this. So thank you, Danielle. And again, if you'd like to reach out to me personally, and, we'll certainly be addressing this question.
Mr. Mahalik and Mr. Boone, there are a couple more that had popped in that I didn't see. Do you want me to read them?
Sure.
Should we go through the remainder of the agenda and then we can answer them, please?
Okay.
Okay.
Are they on agenda items, Damian?
No, they're not.
All right, then we could answer them at the end. Okay.
Policy Committee, Mr. Costello.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be making a motion at this time to recommend the consideration and approval of the following policies in items 1 and 2. I so move.
Second, Mrs. Bath.
Mrs. Bibla,
Yes.
Mr. Brogna,
Yes.
Mrs. McCurdy,
Yes.
Mrs. McGovern,
Yes.
Mrs. Spath,
Yes.
Mr. Schwank,
Yes.
Mr. Costello,
Yes.
Mrs. Haddix,
Yes.
and Mr. Moon.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Human Resources, Mrs. McGovern.
Recommend consideration and approve items 1 through 6. I so move.
Second, Mr.
I
Costello.
second.
Ms. Bibla,
Yes.
Mr. Brogna,
Yes.
Mrs. McCurdy,
Yes.
Mrs. McGovern,
Yes.
Mrs. Spath,
Yes.
Mr. Schwank,
Yes.
Mr. Costello,
Yes.
Mrs. Haddix,
Yes.
Mr. Boone.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Academic Programs, Mrs. Bibla.
I'm seeking approval of items 1 through 3. I so move. Second, Mrs. Bath.
Ms. Bibla,
Yes.
Mr. Brogna,
Yes.
Mrs. McCurdy,
Yes.
Mrs. McGovern,
Yes.
Mrs. Spath,
Yes.
Mr. Schwank,
Yes.
Mr. Costello,
Yes.
Mrs. Haddix,
Yes.
Mr. Boone.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Co-curricular, Mr. Swank.
Thank you, Mr. Boone. I'll make a motion to approve items 1 through 3. I so move.
Second, Mr. Costello.
Ms. Bibla,
Yes.
Mr. Brogna,
Yes.
Mrs. McCurdy,
Yes.
Mrs. McGovern,
Yes.
Mrs. Spath,
Yes.
Mr. Schwank,
Yes.
Mr. Costello,
Yes.
Mrs. Haddix,
Yes.
and Mr. Boone.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Physical Plant and Construction, Mrs. Haddix.
I am seeking approval of item number 1 and 2. I so move.
Second.
Ms. Bibla,
Yes.
Mr. Brogna,
Yes.
Mrs. McCurdy,
Yes.
Mrs. McGovern,
Yes.
Mrs. Spath,
Yes.
Mr. Schwank,
Yes.
Mr. Costello,
Yes.
Mrs. Haddix,
Yes.
and Mr. Boone.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, Technology Committee has no report at this time. Positive Behavioral Intervention, Mrs. Bibla.
I'm seeking approval of item 1. I so move.
Second, Mrs. McGovern.
Mrs. Bibla,
Yes.
Mr. Brogna,
Yes.
Mrs. McCurdy,
Yes.
Mrs. McGovern,
Yes.
Mrs. Spath,
Yes.
Mr. Schwank,
Yes.
Mr. Costello,
Yes.
Mrs. Haddix,
Yes.
and Mr. Boone.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay. Mr. Blanchard, our non-agenda questions, please.
Okay, let me see here. I think most of these were answered in Mr. Mahalick's response. Michael Deckman mentions that they started a petition with 555 people signing to open 4 days a week immediately. About 50% of them are in Mountaintop District. How are you going to respond to this?
So the response is we're beginning March 1st with our reopening plan. We certainly cannot open 4 days a week for all students until they relax the 6-foot rule, or we find out how many students are actually coming back. If the numbers that choose to come back is very, very, very minimal, then we could open up for more days a week for our students. So again, what I would do is I would petition the Department of Health and the Department of Education for them to relax that 6-foot rule. Until that's relaxed, the district just does not have the ability to bring more kids in than we're have space available.
Lori Deckman mentions St. Jude's has been open. Daycares have been open. Numbers are down 50% since last month. Rosemary Myers mentions the numbers in Luzerne County are the lowest now than ever. Lori Deckman also mentions that essential workers have had to figure it out. It's Amanda Clark's Seitzer or Seltzer, I apologize. 6 foot encouraged, not mandatory.
It's mandated for school districts. And if somebody on record tells me different from the Department of Health, from the Department of Ed, we will certainly, absolutely, as we were planning in August, then move with that.
Let's see. Most of this kind of are comments to what you just mentioned. John Davies, hasn't the CDC already stated children should return to in-person school? Aren't those the recommendations you should be following?
Yeah, with absolutely, and we are following them, and we're beginning next Monday with our reopening plan. But and CDC has stated that with mitigating efforts, and their mitigating efforts remain.
Karen Parker, only 2 items listed on the agenda under HR. What are the 4 items? Were there 4 on the? Let me go up. There's actually 6. I have them on the screen, Mrs. Parker.
She's probably looking at a agenda that was posted earlier that only had 4 at the time, but others were added.
She was probably looking when we voted on it, probably only page 3 was on the screen. So these are the other items that were voted on. That's what happened.
Okay. Charlie Madrofsky, masks are mandated in school settings by DOH. Sports are occurring in the school setting, and both wrestling and basketball are maskless during the play. How is the liability risk any different?
I could probably send that to Mr. Dean, Mr. Jack Dean.
Thank you. The district that we play in makes masks optional, if I'm not mistaken. They were, and so right now in our division, masks are optional. Some kids wear masks, some do not. We have implemented, since the start of at least the basketball season, strict guidelines on who's allowed into the game. We slowly have opened it up. We started with no fans, then 2 parents per senior players. After each JV game, after each 9th grade game, the gym is sanitized. So we're doing all we can in compliance with what the recommendations are by our district athletic association. So far we've had, well, I don't want to say that, but it's worked out well.
Thank you. Mrs. Parker asked, could the current agenda list on the website be updated with the one used during the board meeting? Yes, we put that up as soon as this is over. Michael Deckman asks, why are we behind other schools? How can they be open and we shut down?
I'm not sure, Mr. Deckman. I know that there's a lot of schools that aren't open. So again, I'm not looking at other schools. I'm looking at Crestwood. That's what's most important to me. Every situation's different. Every situation is different. We try to open up when others did not. We're coming back sooner than others. We had computers when others didn't. There's so many different situations, sir, but what I'm focused on is Crestwood and the community that we reside in.
Thank you. Daniel Petrosky, are we to assume that we are returning the same days we returned the last time we reopened?
Yes. Yes. And that information will be coming from your building administrators, but yeah, your groups will remain the same. Now there may be some changes for students that moved into the district or moved out of the district into other locations, but very similar approach that we had successfully implemented in October and November.
Thank you. Mr. Boone, that's all the questions.
Okay, thank you. At this time, our next scheduled committee meeting will be held on Thursday, March 11th, 4 o'clock, and the regular board meeting on March 18th. That will be held either in the media center on the secondary campus or via Zoom. We'll see how things are going at that time. That meeting is at 6:30. Need a motion for adjournment.
Do we need to have a roll
Motion.
call
Oh,
for adjournment?
Yeah, motion.
once we get the motions, we'll
Make a
take a roll
motion.
call.
Okay,
Second and roll call.
okay.
Motion, Bibla.
Second. Swank.
Miss Bibla,
Yes.
Mr. Brogna,
Yes.
Mrs. McCurdy,
Yes.
Mrs. McGovern,
Yes.
Mrs. Spath,
Yes.
Mr. Swank,
Yes.
Mr. Costello,
Yes.
Mrs. Haddix,
Yes.
and Mr. Boone.
Yes,
Motion carried.
meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Night.
Good night.